Welcome to Health Club with Julia. I'm your host, health coach, and registered dietitian, Julia Campagna. I'm on a mission to bridge the gap between looking your best and living your life to the fullest. After years of over dieting, struggling with disordered eating, and destroying my social life, I finally found how to reach my dream physique without sacrificing the things I love. Now I'm sharing all my strategies and education with you. We'll be talking all things health, including hormones, metabolism, and lifestyle to help you cut out the confusion and start living. So get cozy and join the club. Hello, you guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Health Club with Julia podcast. As always, I'm so happy you're here. Today, we're going to be talking about tracking, and not exactly what you think. I'm not going to be talking about how to track. I'm going to be talking about how to not track. So I actually recently got this question, and I thought it was a really good topic of conversation to have because, let's be real, you don't want to track forever. Right? I'm assuming that you don't want to track numbers forever. You don't want to, have kids in the future and then be like, Mommy, why are you tracking your food? I feel like I don't know anybody. I will say I don't know anybody who does want to track for life. If you do, then that is absolutely fine. And you can continue to track your whole life if you desire it. There's nothing wrong with that. But I know for most women, most people in general, they don't want to track forever. But I also do understand that for some, it is kind of nerve-wracking where they have been kind of, I guess reliant is the word, on tracking, and they're afraid that if they stop tracking, all their progress is going to go away and they won't be able to control themselves. And there's a lot of different situations going on with fear around not tracking. But I do think that it's important to break that and trust your body enough to track or to not track and still maintain or lose weight, whatever your goal is. And so I want to talk about, one, weaning off of tracking, and two, how to then either lose weight if that is your goal or maintain weight while not tracking, because it is possible to lose weight without tracking. It is possible to maintain your weight without tracking. And I know that is kind of a fear for people is, I've been tracking for so long. What do I do now? I don't even know how to not track anymore. So first and foremost, if you are tracking, I would wean off of it after you have a really good understanding on how to eat for yourself. Right? If you are already tracking, and if you are not somebody who's tracking, you do not have to start tracking. Can tracking be a good educational tool in terms of nutrition and food and the amounts and all of that for you? Yes, absolutely. I do think that it is a great tool to use. However, it's not for everyone, and nobody needs to start tracking if you're not tracking already. But if you are already tracking, I would suggest wean off of it after you already have a really good understanding of how to eat. This is going to help make the process coming off of tracking easier because you have a really good understanding. If you don't have an understanding of how to eat for yourself and your body, then that I think is where a lot of fear comes from. Like maybe you don't trust yourself or you just don't understand how you should be eating. And so when you come off, then everything kind of goes haywire. So I would wean off after you have a really good understanding of how to eat. So figuring out what your body needs, what is maintenance for you, what does that look like? And not in terms of numbers, but what does an actual day of eating look like for you for maintenance? What does a day of eating look like for you if you're going through a cut and you're tracking right now? Just really understand kind of what a day of eating looks like for you. Are you getting in the essential nutrients that you need? How much are you eating? Basically, in a nutshell, again, get a really good understanding of how to eat first. Then, after you have this baseline understanding, you feel really good on like what that looks like for you on a daily basis, then I would start to wean off of it. So I would start slow. I would not maybe just cut cold turkey, especially if you're someone who fears coming off of tracking and not tracking anymore. I would wean off of it slowly. One, for the emotional and like mindset side of that, if you are somebody who does fear not tracking, I think weaning off of it slowly can help with the mindset around it and help with that emotional kind of roller coaster you'll go through with stopping. And then also I think that again, it'll show you like oh, on my days that I am tracking, I'm eating X amount, and my days that I'm not tracking, I'm eating pretty similarly to that. So you can kind of compare tracking and not tracking. So I would just start slowly. So cut down on the frequency. So let's say you are somebody who tracks every single day, 7 days a week, right? If you want to wean off of that, I would start maybe tracking like 4 days a week, and then you have 3 days where you're not tracking anything. And again, on the days that you're not tracking, understand that you're not tracking to then go off the walls and have like all this kind of shit food and like just eat so much more. You still want to be in control of what you are eating. So keep that in mind with the days that you are not tracking. But start slow, cut down the frequency. If you're going from 7 days, I would start maybe with 4 days of tracking, 3 days not tracking, and then eventually go down and down. So maybe then after a few weeks, you feel comfortable with that. So maybe you can drop that to 2 days of tracking, 5 days not tracking, until eventually you get down to total 7 days of not tracking. But with this, also in line, like hand in hand with weaning off of it slowly and cutting down the frequency, you need to make sure that you are analyzing yourself as you go through this as well. Analyze how your meals are and how you do with them. So not only how are your meals, like are you still getting in the nutrients that you need? Are you having protein at every meal? Are you having the right amount of food that you need to be eating? Do you feel like you undereat when you don't track? That's a really big one actually for a lot of people. So not only how are your meals, but how are you doing with them? Do you feel like you lose control when you are not tracking and then you eat everything? Do you feel like you eat smaller meals, or you just skip out on meals when you're not tracking and therefore you're undereating? Really analyze as you are cutting the frequency down, because if, for example, you do your 4 days of tracking, 3 days not tracking, and then on those 3 days you skip some meals, you just find that you're under eating a little bit, maybe you want to go back to the 7 days of tracking or like 6 days of tracking and really again get that understanding down better of what you need. If you are someone, again, same kind of scenario, flip that. If you are doing, again, you're having 3 days not tracking, 4 days tracking, or whatever the split is, if you feel like on the days that you're not tracking you lose control and then eat all the things, maybe you start binge eating a little bit, then again, maybe you do need to track a little bit longer, understand more about yourself, your body, your needs with food, and then you can cut back again. So you can kind of play around with the frequency that you're doing it throughout the week. If you cut down incrementally, like I have mentioned, 4 days on, 3 days not tracking, and you're doing really well with that, and then you cut again and you do 2 days tracking, 5 days not tracking, you're doing really well with that, and then don't track at all and you're still doing really well, then that's great. But if you do find that you are going one way or the other, where you're overeating or undereating on days that you are not tracking, or if you are eating, worse food and you're not having as much nutrients to your meals, then you can kind of go back and forth with that. Increase your tracking again, then decrease in the future once you feel better, etc. So as you are cutting the frequency of your tracking, just make sure you analyze how you're doing with the foods, how are your meals, and how are you like emotionally, physically doing with them as well. So it's really important to not only wean off slowly, but analyze and be in tune with what you are doing on the days that you're not tracking. So that would be basically like my biggest tip for weaning off of tracking and how to not track. I would just say don't go cold turkey and stop tracking altogether unless you feel super confident in yourself in doing that. Then maybe that's for you. But for most cases, I would say wean off of it slowly, cut the frequency, and analyze how you're doing along the way. Pretty simple. That would be, how I would do it with my clients. We just monitor things as we cut the frequency, and then eventually we drop down to no tracking. That's my tips. Now, how do we do this when trying to either maintain weight or lose weight? So, maintaining weight. You are just looking to maintain. You're not really necessarily looking to lose weight or gain weight. You're happy with where you're at and you want to maintain that, but you don't want to track anymore. How do we do that? So this is where I said before you wean off of it, get a really good understanding of how to eat, what your body likes, etc., because this is going to make that maintenance phase, not tracking, a lot easier. Eat similarly to how you ate when you did track. If you had 3 meals and 2 snacks while you were tracking and you were maintaining weight, continue having 3 meals and 2 snacks when you're not tracking. Now, some days it might be a little bit off. Some days you might be a little bit busier and you're only getting like 1 snack in versus 2, or whatever the case is. But generally speaking, we want to just eat similarly to what we were eating. So I would say just eat similarly to what you were having when you were tracking. And I guess exercise has to go in with maintaining too. So as long as you're maintaining weight, you're eating similarly to what you're tracking, you're not doing any additional exercise or anything like that, you should maintain your weight. Now again, this is kind of going back to understanding tracking. If you were in a deficit when you were tracking and now you're trying to wean off tracking but you want to go into maintenance and you're not tracking, first of all, I would have an exit strategy and probably track until you're at maintenance. I wouldn't just go from a cut and then don't track anything and try to maintain. It's a little bit harder. Plus, you'll probably also be under eating more than you think that you are, so I would have a more proper exit strategy. But let's just say, for example, you track in a cut and then you want to maintain, but you don't want to track anymore. So you're like, all right, I'm done tracking and I just want to maintain, I'm done with this cut. If you were having, let's say, just 3 meals when you were in a cut, tracking, that means, okay, you need to be eating a little bit more than that to be at maintenance. So maybe you add in those 2 snacks, not tracking, so you have 3 meals, 2 snacks, and you're not tracking, and that should be, more maintenance. You can also kind of understand if you're maintaining weight or not through weigh-ins. If you are not tracking anymore and you feel like you're eating similarly and you're not doing any additional exercise, you should roughly be maintaining your weight. And now maintenance, I think a lot of people get confused with maintenance and what that means in terms of scale weight. When you are maintaining, that does not mean you're at the exact same number every single day. We have normal fluctuations on an every single day basis. So sometimes you might be up a pound, sometimes you might be down a pound, but you want to be roughly within a certain range. I would say plus or minus like 3 pounds is fine for maintenance. 3 to 5 pounds is fine for like maintaining your weight. So keep that in mind as well. But basically with maintenance and not tracking, you just kind of want to eat similarly to what you ate when you are maintaining your weight, and making sure you're not doing like any additional exercise or anything like that could put you more into a deficit. And if you are doing additional exercise, you might need to eat a little bit more to help balance that out and still maintain. Now with losing weight, again, you do not need to track macros to lose weight. I do this with plenty of my clients where we do not track macros and they see results and they lose weight. But I would analyze your starting intake. I would potentially, again, if you were tracking maintenance and then you don't want to track when you go through a cut, just analyze where are you starting. And even if you are not tracking your maintenance, if you are not tracking at all and you want to lose weight, what are you currently eating? What is your current intake? Are you having just 3 meals? Are you having 3 meals and 2 snacks, 3 meals and 1 snack, more? What does that look like for you? Wherever you're at right now, if you're like, oh, where I'm at right now, I want to lose weight, what is your intake right now? And also, what is your activity levels? But in terms of food, what is your intake right now? Analyze and start there. So for example, let's just say right now where you're at wanting to lose weight, you are eating 3 meals and 2 snacks. Great. That means that if you want to go in a cut and you don't want to track your numbers, track your macros, you can simply just cut down on these snacks or portion sizes or both of what you're eating. So again, as the example, you want to lose weight, you're currently eating 3 meals, 2 snacks. As you go through a deficit then, without tracking, maybe you take out a snack, so you're having 3 meals and 1 snack. Great, maybe you see some progress, and then eventually if you stall on that progress, then you can take out another snack. Okay, so then I'll just have 3 meals, no snacks. So it really is just analyzing your starting intake and then cutting back on the amount that you're eating and or portion sizes. So if you are somebody who has 3 meals and no snacks, generally speaking, and you want to lose weight, maybe you cut down on the portion sizes of those 3 meals that you're having. So you can use one or the other or both to help you go through a deficit phase and lose weight. Another tool here would be, okay, if you are cutting down on, let's say, snacks, you're down to 3 meals. You originally started with 3 meals, 2 snacks, you're now down to 3 meals. Make more of an effort to move more, and that will put you more into a deficit, help you lose more weight without having to cut back on food. So that's another tool that you can use. But in terms of just tracking, without tracking macros, you can still lose weight by just analyzing your starting place and cutting back on snacks / amount and or portion sizes as well. So those are my biggest tips there. I hope that that helps you guys understand, one, how to wean off of it, and two, what you can do to either maintain your weight or lose your weight without tracking. It really just comes down to analyzing where your current intake is at and then adjusting your intake as necessary in terms of like the look of your plate and how much you're having, portion sizes versus numbers, if that makes sense. So that is everything for weaning off tracking, how to lose/maintain weight without tracking. If you guys have additional questions on any of this stuff, if you are nervous to come off tracking and you have questions on that, let me know. DMs are always open for you guys, and I will see you guys next week.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Health Club with Julia podcast. If you loved the episode, share the podcast and tag me, and subscribe so you don't miss any further episodes. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a DM. Thanks for being a part of the club. See you next time.